Hello, I'm Gill Thewlis, and I am a business coach in the creative industries, and I'm also a designer and maker of bespoke clothing for working women. And I work with Ellen in creating the ModFin system.
Hi, I'm Ellen O'Hara, business coach based in the UK, and working with Gill on ModFin, which is a business and financial modeling methodology for creative and craft businesses. And these are our top 10 tips on pricing to achieve a profit. Number one, accurately cost before you price. It's impossible to come up with a realistic price for something unless you properly understand how much it's actually costing you to make in the first place. And this goes for making products such as ceramics, as well as delivering services such as craft workshops. So the three key things for you to consider are the cost of the materials or other direct costs involved in making that thing or delivering that service. So it could be workshop, room hire, for instance. Your time, the cost of your time at your calculated day rate, thinking about how long it's taking you to prepare, deliver a product or service. And finally, making a contribution to your overheads.
It's always add some profit. Once you've calculated your cost, always add some profit before you calculate your price. And you need to be honest with yourself about how much profit you need to add to each sale. You need profit in order to invest in new things in your business, develop new lines of work, buy new equipment or machinery, provide cash flow. So those of you who go into batch production and then hold stock and then ultimately sell that stock, you will have had to pay for all of those materials and inputs to those items before you actually sell them, and that needs funding. And to save money for times of low income in the future. And you just need to be clear with yourself how much profit on an annual basis you need to generate to cover those things. And then you need to work out how much profit you need to add to each sale.
Never charge less than your minimum sales price. So once you've worked out your cost and you've decided how much you arrive at your personal minimum sales price for each item. And every product or service that you deliver and create will have its own individual minimum sales price. It's up to you to decide what they are, depending on the amount of profit you need and want for your craft business. And the amount of profit you can add to every product and to every service will vary. So there may be some things where you think you can add a 5% margin, other things that you think you can add a 20% margin. But the key thing is to try never to sell below your minimum sales price once you've worked it out.
If you work to commission, it's a very good idea to make sure that you charge something up front in the process of making the commission. So, for example, I design and make bespoke clothing for working women. Everything I make is unique to the person. So once we've agreed what exactly the design will be and exactly what the fabric will be, and I've come up with a final price for that piece, I will ask the customer to pay me 50% of that end price. Once I've received that 50%, I will then go and buy all the fabric and all the things I need to buy to make that item. And they will then pay me the other 50% at the point that they come to collect that item. Now, if you have more complex projects, if you're making very large pieces, there may be an opportunity to create more staged payments. So you might have 2 or 3 points in the process where you ask the customer to pay. But if you're making for commission, please don't wait until the end before the customer pays you. Please take some money at a point early on, and ideally enough to cover any out costs that you're incurring as you work through that commission.
Always know your break-even point for each item. So again, if you make for stock or in batches, make sure you understand how many you would need to sell to break even. And the break-even sales point is the amount that you need to sell, or the amount of income you need to generate to cover all of the costs, including overheads and the things we've mentioned before. This can often be a little higher than you think. So again, accurate costing will allow you to work out how many items or how many workshop hours, for instance, you need to sell in order to recover all of those costs and break even.
Selling directly to the customer will always earn you more than selling through any other intermediary or any other route. So online platforms will take a commission. Once the item has been sold, they collect the money from the customer, they will deduct a commission, and then they will pay you. And usually they will take between 10 and 30%. So if the item that you're selling is sold to the customer for 100 euros, you'll receive somewhere between 70 and 90 euros for that item. Galleries, craft shops will deduct a commission in the same way, but they take a bit more, so between 25 and 50% before they pay you. So for your 100 euro item to the customer, you will receive somewhere between 50 and 75 euros. Wholesale orders placed by retailers will usually be for less than 50% of the retail price to the customer, and sometimes as low as 25%. So that same 100 euro piece, you will receive somewhere between 25 euros and 50 euros for that item.
This means that some selling channels, might not be viable for you. So you want to aim for parity in your retail pricing across all selling channels. In other words, what you sell something for on your website is the same as on someone else's website or in a craft store. But some of these distribution channels may require you to sell below your minimum sales price. So for example, with the wholesale order, an item that you would sell to the customer for 100 euros, you might receive less than 50, yet 50 euros might be your minimum sales price. So these channels are not really viable for you, certainly not long term. So if you do decide to sell through a channel for less than your minimum sales price, such as a wholesale order, there must be another benefit, maybe increased profile or access to an audience that you can't gain any other way. And we'd suggest you only do this for a limited time.
It's really important to know your market. Who do you compete with? So you have two kinds of competitors: direct competitors, people who make similar items to you, and indirect competitors, so people who provide alternatives for the same desire in your customer. So for example, if you're a jeweler, you may make items in precious metal using gemstones, and your direct competitors are other artisanal jewelers who make similar items to you using precious metals and gemstones. But that customer is a customer for all kinds of interesting ways of presenting themselves. And they may, when they're thinking about whether or not to buy a piece of your jewelry, may also be thinking about, well, maybe I could buy a hat, or maybe I could buy a scarf, or maybe I could buy something else that actually makes me stand out from my peers or the crowd. So it's important to understand your customers and who they might also be thinking about spending their money with. Sometimes there's an upper market threshold for things. We know from working with weavers, for example, there's only so much anyone will pay for a scarf. However beautifully made and however complex its construction, there's a market ceiling for a scarf.
Sometimes, though, customers may pay more than you think. So telling the right story can help increase or justify or validate the perceived value of your work. And the perceived value is how customers think about your work and what they think is valuable or beneficial about it. Reputation and status, for instance, can allow you to increase your prices. So have a think about how you might increase your prices as your profile and reputation grows, and therefore the perceived value of your work is increasing.
And finally, please make a cash flow forecast if you haven't already done one. You need one of these because it helps you budget for seasonal income peaks and troughs. Some of you will have times of the year where you generate almost no income at all, and times of the year when most of your income comes in. Some of you will have a peak period in the run-up to Christmas, for example. It will help you see in advance when you may run low on cash. Usually you prepare a cash flow forecast with a kind of year time frame, and it will help you plan your purchases of materials and inputs to what you make for times when you know you will have cash in the bank. Now, when you Google cash flow forecast, you can find lots of templates on the internet that you could try and fill in, but they never fit the uniqueness of your business. So we would say it's always a good idea to make your own cash flow forecast from first principles so that it reflects the uniqueness of your business, because the primary purpose of this cash flow forecast is to help you make better financially orientated decisions about your business. And so it needs to reflect the uniqueness of your business. And the easiest way to do this is to use Excel or numbers. And if you don't already know how to use Excel or numbers, we would strongly recommend that you get to know it well enough to be able to create your own cash flow forecast. But also, if you can get to know these systems well enough, they'll really help you in calculating accurate costings and in calculating good pricing strategies. So they're very valuable tools if you don't already use them. So those are our top 10 tips in building profit in your crafting business. Thank you for your time, and we wish you all the best as you go on and develop your crafting business for the future.